special guest, someone I've wanted to have on this channel for a very long time now. You just heard him play some awesome tunes. We've got ex-Carcass and now with the band Strigoi, Ben Ash. We've been trying to do this for quite some time now.
We have indeed. It's probably been a couple of years now or so forth, but we're here, we're in the room, and we're ready to make it happen.
Yes, we are, dude. So, Ben, we're going to cover a lot of stuff. Guys, Ben's going to give you a lot of valuable advice and just some tips and some things that can help you along the way. But I want to start out with, let's start out with Carcass, man. Let's start out with you getting into the band and how that came about.
That was 2013 to the start of 2018. My first grouping of shows was 3 nights at the Camden Underworld, where the first night was just kind of like a greatest hits set. There was nothing of surgical at that point. It was literally just everything up to maybe a dabbling of Swan Song, but predominantly, you know, between Reek and Heartwork. And then a notable thing was on the second show, and this is a bit perverse, but this is what happened. It was because this was in 2013, so it would have been the anniversary of when Heartwork came out. Jeff suggested, or insisted, let's do necroticism.
Nice.
So it's, you know, oh, it's obviously going to be this. Now we're going to do necroticism. So the second show was basically a necroticism set. And we played it pretty much like the album. So there was no talking in between. So you've got all those classic surgical, the pathologists kind of sound bites in between the songs. And then the set finished and the encore was a few, you know, of the other bits and pieces, probably from Heartwork at that point, and symphonies. And then the last show was back to the first one. And I'll tell you a little thing that happened on that third show, which I'll never forget.
Yeah.
There was a guy in the crowd, right? He was leaning over taking photos. And as the gig was going on, I could smell burning. And I think, what's burning? Something's burning on stage. Right?
Oh, cool.
And this is as the gig was going on. And I walk over to this bloke who's he was leaning over a stage light. It had literally started singeing his jacket, right?
Oh, man.
I'm not joking. And the gig's happening. It's in full flow. And I think it was something like Carnal Forge or something we're playing at the time. I remember. And I lean over to him and I go, mate, move off the light. And he goes, I'm from Ecuador. You'll make my dream come true. And I go, you're on fire. You're burning. Like, get off, right? And I kid you not, later that same year, this is when I was out with a monomarth, at the Forum, Kentish Town Forum. I saw this guy in the queue. And the reason I spotted him, he's wearing the same jacket with scorch marks going up the side. And I said, are you from Ecuador? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I remember. You're the fire guy, aren't you? Yeah. And one of the most ridiculous things that was said at that gig, because basically a lot of people didn't know I was in the band. They didn't know me from Adam. Probably still don't, but never mind. Anyway, I was walking up there and this guy goes, excuse me, are you the guitar tech from a monomarth? And I said, no. And he goes, shame. It just walks off. And I'm like, this anonymity thing's amazing.
Ben, I've got to ask this. Share with us what it was like, the best you can, just in general, to be on such big stages, to be with such a notable band like Carcass, and to be touring with these other big bands, and just, like, what was that like, dude?
It's a privilege. It's a massive, massive privilege to be able to be on that platform. Initially, it can be utterly terrifying and a bit turbulent. But once you get comfortable with it, you'd be amazed how much more comfortable the bigger shows can be to the smaller shows.
Yeah.
Because the thing that a lot of people don't see is when you're on those bigger shows, especially like the festivals or you're playing the, you know, arenas and whatnot, is that the photo pit is pretty big, right? The photo pit, and when you've got the security, there's quite a bit of distance between the first barrier, right? So you got that distance. And depending on how high the stage is, you're looking down. People aren't necessarily particularly on a level. And it can sometimes feel that they're not even watching you, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
But they're not watching me, they're watching the main people. But anyway, you know, it can sometimes feel like a blanket, right? It can, because there's quite a bit of distance. So in a weird way, it can feel very comfortable on that big stage, you know, because also you've got lots of space. And I mean, there are points I was doing all these silly kicks. I looked like a member of Whitesnake, just
White
going
Snake.
about,
Yeah.
it's so funny, the Doug Aldrich kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, being on the big stage is amazing. And also, depending on the songs you're playing as well. So if you're playing a song like Heartwork, where it's very anthemic, like if you go to South America, when I was in South America, everyone's singing, whoa, 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 whoa. They're all singing, the guitar themes and whatnot. It's an amazing feeling. You kind of feel like you're an Iron Maiden just for a moment,
Man.
or yeah, it's an incredible thing when you get that particular song that resonates with people. It's wonderful. It's really good. But I will definitely say I'll never, ever, ever sell short a rough and tumble, dog and donut gig, right? Because
Nice.
the thing is, when people are that close,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you could be singing or playing whatever song, and then after that, the bloke at the bar go, I didn't like any of that. Or get off. It's really humbling to do that. And the thing is, I still remember playing small club shows just to get attention. It
Wow,
wasn't
dude.
even for pay. It was just to make sure people's heads were looking up
Yeah.
and they weren't ignoring you. Okay.
Mm.
And I think it's super important that people don't sell short those routes of doing those gigs. And even if they go to an open mic night or something like that, it's good to be in a place where you are not the main focus, and you can get, you kind of not so much baiting, but the challenge is trying to get, or convert people to actually listen to you. You probably don't care, or aren't there for you, basically.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, man, because I play live acoustic shows kind of on the side, 2 or 3 of those shows a
Mhm.
week. I also host an open mic here in the Tampa Bay area, and I encourage, even if you consider yourself a bedroom guitar player, I encourage everyone to get up there because, and Ben, you know this more than anyone, much more than I do. I've played in front of several hundreds of people. You've played in front of thousands, man, but I encourage everybody to do that because you build a different skill set on top of just playing
Absolutely.
guitar and singing, right? I mean, now you're on stage, you're playing in front of someone, and as you just mentioned, sometimes it could be more challenging to play in front of a smaller
Yeah.
crowd than a big stadium, right?
Saying that, if you do have an injury on stage in a big stage, that can be a bit disconcerting. This happened to me on the 70,000 tons of metal cruise ship.
Oh man.
I remember stepping back and I was using one of those fabric fender cables, right? Which I'll
Yeah.
never, ever use again. Ever, ever use again. The reason being is when it comes to those cables. So if I grab a cable out, right? The thing is, with those, they love to coil, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you pull them, they still stay coiled. So these little loops are trip hazards, right? And also, when they're resting on the ground, they don't slide. They've got traction, right?
Yeah.
So actually, but the thing is, but this one, these have traction. Sorry, I've got to do it the way around. Excuse me. Okay. The good thing is with these, okay, is they stick. So if you stand on it, it won't roll. Okay, you'll just step on it and you'll move on.
Gotcha.
Fabric ones, because they're slippery. And what happened to me at this gig? I just stepped back on this with one of the loops, like so, and it went and took the leg
Oh,
with it, and I partially dislocated my knee.
oh my God, dude.
It just went out with it. And there is a video of it on YouTube. There is a video of it. If anyone's curious enough to actually see, I can't watch it because it makes me physically ill.
Maybe we'll
It
put a
was
link to that in the description.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay, Carcass on the main deck, and yeah, you'll see me fall, and it's so Spinal Tap when you watch it. So I fall over, and I've got the flares in the air like this, right? The tech runs over to me, and he's like, "Do you want to help?" And I'm like, "No, go away, go away!" Like this. People are laughing their arse. I'm in a lot of pain,
Oh, I
a lot
bet,
of pain,
dude. Yeah.
and I'm up in the air, and then I get up, and it's kind of like a Riggs Lethal Weapon bit where it's out, and then you smack it back in, and then you're back into the show. But the thing is, the leg's then in trauma. So there are bits where I'm still doing all the silly kicks and so forth because it's not broken. It's
Yeah.
just, stressed. And the thing is, if I stop moving, fluid's going to build up to the knee and you can't move at all. So I'm just like, for Astigig, I'm running about moving. So I know as soon as I stop, it's going to fill up with fluid and I'm not going to be able to do a damn thing. And yeah, pretty horrible. And the thing is, on the big stage, everyone can see it. Everyone can see it. Everyone can see exactly what you're doing. So it's all the big thing I can say, folks, whatever happens with this sort of thing, it's all in the recovery. Okay. If you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, but it's all in how you pick yourself up and kind of if you are working with a network of people that are a group, not individuals, they will cover for you. Because there are a couple of times where I was in bands where either a guitarist would drop out, I think something would drop out, and something would have to happen. So you improvise a bit, you do something. So at least, yes, there's acknowledgement there's a mistake, but you support each other, you make the show happen, and there we go. That's kind of what I would say.
No, I love that you brought that up, man. That's a big thing because I think everybody makes mistakes, whether it's in the playing, whether it's we slipped on a cable or something like that. I remember walking across the stage one time and I didn't have enough cable length, so it jerks me back. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I look like I just started playing, on stage yesterday, so that was
yeah,
a long
yeah.
time ago. But Ben, so with Carcass, man, now you're in a band called Strigoi now. And definitely, guys, I'll have links to Ben's, his social media, of course, the band Strigoi. Now, those will be in the description of this YouTube video here, so do make sure you check those out. But can you take us through like the transition from the time that you weren't with Carcass anymore, and of course getting started in Strigoi here?
Definitely. Because I'd been working with Carcass for 5 years. And there was a point, and you'll find on my socials, a lot of this is all very much public knowledge. It came to a point where I was on full burnout,
Okay.
just full, utter burnout. Everyone was basically. I definitely was, and I needed a change. And I remember speaking to my tutor, my old mentor, Bruce John Dickinson. Now, depending on how old you might know, not the Maiden Bruce.
Right.
There was a band in the UK called the Little Angels, and the Little Angels were kind of like the English Bon Jovi to my ears, basically. And at the time, they did really well. I mean, I remember Bruce telling me about they were the opening band for Guns N' Roses at the Marquee Club just when Appetite opened up,
Wow.
and they also went on tour with Queensryche during the Empire period, and they were on tour with Van Halen during the Far North for Knowledge. So anyway, Bruce is one of those guys that's very much been there and done it, right? And what I was going through that time, I thought, who could I speak to really open up of where I'm at this point? And I was like, Bruce. So I gave Bruce a call, and he said, "Well, Ben, because he actually was at ACM. He left ACM in the 90s, and he co-founded the BIM Institute, Brighton Music Institute, with Dave, and it was his co-partner was Damien Keys, who some might know from his socials. Go check him out. They sold BIM, and with Bruce's other partners, they then founded WaterBear, which is based in Brighton. There is actually now another branch actually in Sheffield, and they were looking for people to do the MA course, basically the music industry and creativity course. And it seemed like a really good option because I had a few funds to the side. I said, if I ever want to get back into studying, I'll keep something, right? And basically they subsidize some of the fee for me to do that. And they were asking me about, because they were looking for teachers. But they said to do the teaching, you need that bit of paper. You need that qualification. They
Yeah.
said, you got the experience, but you need the paper. So I decided to come out from the touring circuit and get myself prepped to study, basically, go into full-time education.
Okay.
And I was pretty fried, pretty frazzled, because for about 5 years I was living out of a little suitcase. What we're doing in between, you get back, you fill out more visas, you wash your jocks, you read a paper, and then you're back out on a flight again, And
Right. Right.
yeah, I was just absolutely fried. So this was very much the right move, and it was for all the parties. It was the right thing. And what I did when I left is I left a video to say, look, because it was all very quiet.
Mm.
And when Tom Draper got the gig that I had, no one was told. So I remember getting all these calls saying, what has happened? Aren't you in the band anymore? And I thought, well, look, this needs to be acknowledged, but it needs to be acknowledged respectfully.
Yeah.
So, and it was in Blabbermouth. It all went about. I did this video, and anyone who wants to see it, they can see it. And if there's a link, you can go see it. I explained I want to get back in education. And the first of all month thing I did was actually not thanking the band. First of all, I thanked the management and I thanked the road crew, because I tell you what, even down from the lighting engineer to the lass who's selling the t-shirts, they're the first in and they're the last out every evening of a tour, right?
That's a job, man.
You
Yeah.
know, and they deserve credit. They totally deserve credit where credit's due. Because the thing is, in a group like that, you know, you do your show, you get given your towel, and you've got your M&Ms and whatever. you know,
M&Ms.
if you want to go down that Van Halen route, sort of, you know. But
Just a
anyway, the
taste.
point is that these people worked their absolute asses off, and they would deserve credit. So they're the first people I mentioned. And last but not least, I mentioned the guys in the band saying thank you, and I still mean this. The opportunity changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. You know, I didn't
I
see
bet, dude.
things the same again. I knew a whole new sector of people. I gained a whole new skill set. And the thing is, Jason, here's the thing to remember, is that all these opportunities are out there, but it's at a price. It's very much at a price. And some people can pay the bills with that. Other people's, their checks are going to bounce. It's not always going to be the same in every band. Some situations will be completely different. You know, all depends on your luck and your opportunity. But there was a lot of, I put it this way, Jason, when I went into that gig, I was very much like a heavy metal enthusiast. I was a hardcore fanboy, right? I used to get all the documentaries and the books. And I'll tell you what, the book
Okay.
that really got me interested in doing any of these shows, Get in the Van by Henry Rollins.
Okay.
That was the book that I remember picking up when I was like 20 years old. I picked it up because there's a bit about it, actually, about my hometown of Hersham. He was staying in Hersham with Jimmy Percy from Sham 69, who, you know, they were kind of seen as the founders, one of the founders of the Oi punk movement in the 80s, but then Percy stepped away because he didn't like the extreme direction that scene was going in. But anyway, Sham 69, legendary band. Leading back to reading this book of Get in the Van, I just found the whole story, the adventure of coming out of your normal situation and just traveling, you know, everywhere and all these things happening. Even if it was rough, you were living life. You know,
Dude.
you were
Yeah.
living. It felt like you were really embracing the moment, and that was inspiring. I still go back to that occasionally, but obviously reading it quite differently now. But anyway, I read these books, and as soon as I was out, I remember being out in South America. So after the 3 nights at the Underworld, we did a short round in South America, and I very quickly realised that all the things I thought I knew nothing. I knew nothing about how does it really work? How should you really behave when you're on tour?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know, and I made a lot of Jason. I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of. I mean, even despite my age being in my 30s,
Yeah.
I made a lot of mistakes, and it was real with working with a group like that and the pedigree it's at. It was sink or swim. It was totally sink or swim, and there were plenty of times I nearly drowned. But the key thing is now being retrospective and really saying, what are the, you know, because I think Satriani said was the lesson is learning the lesson.
Oh, I like that.
So there
Yeah.
we go.
I'm a huge
The lesson,
Satriani fan, as you know, man.
yeah,
I love, I've got his book, Strange, Beautiful Music. I'm reading through it
sure,
for the second or third time now, actually. I just saw him and Vi play together last month.
sure,
That was phenomenal. Ben, though,
yeah,
talking about your experience with Carcass and some of the challenges that you had, your time where you felt you needed to step away, but now you're in this band called Strigoi. What are some of the things you're doing differently, or what is your approach to
right.
Strigoi that's different than Carcass?
This is great because what happened was when I was doing my my masters at WaterBear, And I was totally convinced, no, I'm just going to study, get back to teaching. I'm not doing the gigging thing again. I got a call from my good friend, Anders Odin. Now, some people, if they're into their extreme metal, will know Anders from his work with Cadaver. He also sessioned for Ministry, Celtic Frost, but he was also TMing at the time and playing bass for Satyricon. I got a call, I think it was the start of 2018, because I would have just at that point started my course, and said, would you be up for helping us out in the summer run? And I was like, yeah, okay. But the thing is, I was like, do I really want to go back out and doing it? And I went over to Norway to do some jams and so forth. And it was a strange one for me because I still don't believe I was ready. And I actually turned the offer down. I turned it down. I was like, thank you very much for the opportunity. Okay. I turned it. I gave what he called a shit sandwich approach. You say something nice, then you deliver the payload, and then you leave it something nice. And I remember Sigurd wouldn't let it go. And I was like out shopping. I got this call. Like, what do you mean? No, sort of thing. Right?
You can't tell me no.
But he taught me round to it. And the thing is, there were some great shows. One of the shows was with Slayer. It's awesome, part of their farewell package. The band were basically going to be playing they were the only band opening them in Bulgaria on their farewell tour. So it wasn't a package. It was a one-off show, and they're the main support. And the funny thing is, to me, not to sound spoiled, I'd been on tour with Slayer, right? I've been on tour with Slayer in 2016. That was with Testament as well. And I'm thinking, well, I've not me. Oh, I've done that. But the thing is, Sig was very persistent and said, look, you don't get these opportunities very often. We're all getting older and so forth. Give it a shot.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of needed that bit of tough love. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And what was interesting working with that band is that from a guitar technique point of view, I thought, it would be the same as a death metal thing. No. It's completely different. Completely different. Do you mind if I grab the guitar or something?
No, please do, man. Please grab it.
Okay. So, for example, let's get a sound happening. So, for example, if you're doing with a lot of the death metal stuff, it's very testosterone based. Okay,
sure.
And the thing is, I used to be quite a hard hitter, and the problem is when you go right, it sounds aggressive, but the intonation goes out. Okay, it goes somewhat sharp.
Yeah,
especially if you've got a Floyd, right? So if I was doing this, hear the clarity. The clarity starts to go sharp. I remember talking about this with Bill with there's a Symposium of Sickness from the Necroticism album. You can hear where it's actually gone sharp. Because at that time they were using like the I think it's the S series Ibanez's, and because of the push, it puts everything sharp. You can hear it, but the tuning was in B concert. So anyway, that's me being very nerdy in particular.
No, I'm glad you bring that up, Ben, because I talk about this on my channel, and when you're palm muting, make sure you're not pressing down too hard. Me, I've got a very light touch. I always have. It probably looks like I'm playing aggressively, but I'm really not. From the way I handle the fretboard to my right hand technique, and I used to think I was doing something wrong, but I mean, you're confirming what I've always done, and what I've been telling other people to just be aware of,
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, initially, because I remember when I did my lessons with Bruce, he was saying, well, what you put into the guitar is what comes out. So if you tickle the strings, it sounds soft. If you're a bit more abrasive, it sounds harder. But the problem is, if you're too abrasive, you get that the Iron Man effect, because it bounces.
Yeah.
So when doing the black metal thing, rather than kind of like where it's kind of quite sharp, that's all the death metal thing.
I love that, man. That sounded awesome.
But then if you're doing the black metal way and you kind of crane the hand and you shake the chain, it's a completely different feel. And I remember going through, you could take a in this case, it would be like a D minor chord, and then you can kind of break it up, and you keep the hand really feathery. I mean, and you get like an orchestral feel.
Yeah, I like it.
And if you were to do an extended one, like that's very death metal, okay, because it's very you can hear that position. Whereas with the black metal fashion, I mean, so it just sounds a lot more. It's got that flamenco kind of approach to it, and I wasn't used to playing. Yeah, totally, because you get a very light feel to it. And also, when it's light like that, you're not burning yourself out, okay?
That's a thing, man, yeah.
When you're doing sort of grindcore... I mean, where it's just a position like... It's got more in common with the bands like Discharge and GBH, way more punk, you know, and you've just got aggressive thing. The funny thing is, when it comes into the black metal thing, the actual inversions, it's so much softer. And I remember a particular song, Brethren in the Dark, from the album Deep of Call Upon Deep, and I've got great memories of playing this in Mexico City at the Dominion Festival 2019. And if you want a song that had amazing ambience, this was it. And the thing is, there's a bit in it where the melody, right, and you hear it going, it's going down, right, and it will sound like that, okay, bum bum bum,
cool.
But the picking weaves. So from a hand point of view, it feels like it's bum, 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 but it's not. It's going bum, bum, bum. So I had to completely rewire how I heard things and how it was moving. Yeah. And it just felt completely unnatural. But it was great to kind of mix up the techniques. And another really cool one as well is, let's say if you're playing with the drive sound and you're trying to get harmonics, most people will get a harmonic, let's say 5th fret, 7th fret, 12th. This one we had was on the 11th, right?
Nice.
Now the reason for this, if you think about it, that's going la 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 la, tick 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 tick. It's staccato. So you've gone from like a... So it's just, it sounds like it's palm muted, but it's open. So you get these really cool techniques, and also things where you can get like natural harmonics, but it sounds like a pinch, but it's a natural, and you bend it. And you get these really cool tones happening. Yeah. So anyway, it was great to kind of learn a whole different skills and approach to how to play stuff. And leading into this is the reason I mention this is that when it came into working with Strigoi, because Greg and Chris kind of list their music as the mixtape of doom. Oh, I like some songs are very grindy. Some songs are deliberately very doom. Other songs are very goth. Other songs are very thrashy. It changes. So depending on the song, the technique I felt had to develop. So it's a bit like, I'll try and get an appropriate sound on for here as well. It's a bit more Strigoi-esque. So it's a song like, I like Frost. We got that kind of, once again, that kind of more, crusty punk feel or so forth. You had kind of be nice and loose. When we're doing the Viscera album, which would be, I guess, the sophomore album from Strigoi at this point, Jamie Gomez, the main producer of that, I remember him saying to me, "Ben, you hit very hard." And I said, "Okay." And he goes, "Knock that off, or you're not on the record." And I'm like, "All right." Well, and I remember trying to wind him up, he had this Ed Sheeran guitar pick in the desk. And I said, why have you got an Ed Sheeran guitar pick? He goes, oh, it fills me full of hate. So I was like, so just to wind him up, I used to reuse it as much as possible using this Ed Sheeran pick. I'd just grab it. And also because my tact was very hard at that time, they actually gave me a really flexy child's pick. You know, the really flexy ones?
Oh yeah, dude.
So
Yeah.
that when I was hitting the string, it wasn't bouncing. So it kept the intonation. But the thing is, when it came to, we were doing that kind of thing, you need something more taut. So it was good to kind of develop around that. And a thing I started using, which is really good, it's actually the 3 pointers. The 3 point Tortex. This is like a 1 mil.
The Tortex.
The great thing about that is it's got more surface area, especially when you're doing that kind of thing. You get that wallop to it, but you don't have to grab the pick too hard. You can be really relaxed, but you still get a real clout out of it. Because I still remember a song, what was it? Satyricon did, it was the Scorn Torrent from the Rebel Extravaganza record, and there's a bit in it where right? 7 minutes. 7 minutes,
That's a
no
workout.
break.
Man.
Yeah, 7 minutes. And it's the only song I remember, it felt like you got to run as high. You got to a point, I can't do it. Whoom! And then you're like, you are flying. You're absolutely flying. But yeah, it was an interesting one to develop all these different techniques with that, working with that band. But when it came into doing the Viscera project for Strigoi, I had to literally take out of my bag, okay, so this is going to be more a Carcassy approach. This is going to be a more Norwegian black metal approach. And then there's the bits and pieces I do anyway. But and also the guidance I had from Jamie about how hard you hit with the pick and whatnot. It made a huge difference. And
that's golden advice, man. Now I do want to come back to Strigoi, but real quick,
please.
Since you have the guitar in your hand, what guitar is that? And I want to talk a little bit about you. You're a Dean artist as well, right, Ben?
I am indeed. Not being too subtle about it today, but I'm very proud. I'm very, very proud to be a Dean artist.
Awesome.
Chris, big shout out to Chris Canella, who I actually met when I was out with Carcass years ago. He was with Fender at that time.
Okay.
And I remember when the sessions came up for the Viscera thing, and there were going to be some shows coming up, and I didn't have a 7-string because this is a 6. But normally for the Strigoi thing, I'm using a 7. And the one that they provide me here, this is a custom matte black finish Exile Select Modern Fluence. And as you can see, you've got the Modern Fluence, Fishman Modern Fluence pickups in there as well. We also got an original German Floyd Rose in this, not a licensed one, a proper one. And also fully splittable as well.
That's cool.
Okay, and the neck, what I loved about this one is that I think it would be classed as a slim D in the specs. To me, it's a little more rounded on this one, which is great because I personally prefer a lot of the C cuts because my thumb doesn't do that, it does that. Because it hyperextends, it puts more pressure in my hand. So if I get a fatter neck, it forces the thumb to roll a bit more. And because of the girth having the 7, that really helps. But yeah, this is the main one I use for Strigoi. I'm going to have the pickups changed fairly soon to DMTs, which are Dean's own wound pickups, which are in here. And what they've done with this particular Vengeance model for me is there's also an EMG PA booster here as well, which is really, really nice on those extra notes. So,
Wow.
And also with this particular guitar, it's truly splittable as well. Okay, so we can take all that off, and if we go for, let's try find something really, really nice, a nice, decent, clean tone, just to kind of give you the idea of. Lovely, lovely spank to it. And a little trick you can do, folks, as well, which is a bit unconventional. Most people, when they go for the split, they just pull those out, and that's good. And what I do, this is a really cool one. If you actually, sounds counterintuitive, if you put on the boost, right, and it's got that bite to it, this is what you can do. Then pull out the pots. You get that really glassy, but you get, take that out, you lose the body. Put it back in. Body,
Bottom and back.
roll the pots in it, exactly. You get that lovely kind of. Glassy approach.
That's
And
a cool
the thing
sound.
is, with the Strigoi gig, there are points where there are going to be, there are kind of these really lovely little phrase lines. A little bit sharp in that bit. See what I mean? Where it's very, very vocal. And the thing is, with that particular gig, is because of the variety of I guess that's once again the mixtape of Misery, the compilation of like black metal influences, death metal, grindcore, thrash, D-beat, all that sort of thing. But then the goth stuff, it's very, very tonally specific. So having this kind of control, not on the floor, but all to hand, is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. But no, I've been super happy with this DMTs. And I'm going to have a 7-string set that's going to be put into the XL that I just showed there.
Now, speaking of XL, you saw me playing earlier, this XL 7-string right here, and I didn't know you had the exact same one right behind you, Ben.
I do. Let's do the snap. Let's do the snap. So we've got that, and voila, there we go. So we've got the same one. But if you notice with this one, this is with the Fishman influences, but it's with the cap on. I specifically wanted the one with the cap rather than the coil showing. But love this guitar. This is absolutely killer. And just to the response on the drive, the only thing is I'll say is that it can get quite hot on the drive tones. So when you're playing live, I always tend to not so much put out the mode switch, but I definitely roll off from the pot a wee bit.
Yeah.
Because you still have the sensitivity, but it's just a little bit more controlled. So all I'd say to folks is really be mindful of the heat on that. At home, it's fine if you want to push it for home recording. That's great. For live, this can be just a tad hot when it's fully racked up. But if you back off on a bit for your room playing, that's great. And the nice thing is, if we do want to get extra sustain and so forth, we just whack it full up. You've got a howling Gary Moore note there, so that's super cool.
I want to give Brad Mader a shout out real quick. He's been with Dean. He's with the band Must Not Kill. He's the founder of that band, and he's been with Dean for 17 years now. So, Brad, thank you, and everybody at Dean, thank you for letting me use this for this video. And of course, Brad and I are doing some stuff together as well. So, yeah, nice guitar. I mean, this one, you've got the you've got the two humbuckers and they're Fishman, but you can make them active by pushing this up, pulling this up, and then go back to passive there. And I actually like the passive, better as I've been jamming with the same.
There's a breadth to it. I mean, sometimes you want that kind of claustrophobicness that you get, if you're with an active, but just the breadth and tone you get for that kind of passive mode is lovely. That's really, really good. But I was going to say, how did I get involved with Strigoi? Okay, this is
yes. I want to get
I do sometimes go on a dog-ended story. So let's Tie and title up. Okay, so talked about 2019, did a run with Satyricon, which went really, really well. Stayed in their books for any further work, but then lockdown hit with COVID and so forth, and a lot of shows are being pulled, and things had to change, and everybody had to kind of reassess where they're at and what they were going to do. So I ended up working back in music retail for a wee bit, and while I was doing that, I got a call from who you probably know as Chris Casket. Chris, the previous bands he was working with was Devilment with Danny Filth, and also
Cool.
he was in Extreme Noise Terror for a period of time. Um, Chris got in contact with me saying, right, because at the time, Greg, well, once again, if people don't know, this is Greg McIntosh. He's the lead guitarist and main songwriter for Paradise Lost. Greg was getting ready to do some anniversary shows. I do believe it was for the album Gothic. So, and because they were on a tight time frame and budget to get the Strigoi album done, Greg really didn't have time to do all the guitar tracking and whatnot, and said, well, would you be available? And I remember this is me traveling back from a shift one evening or whatever. So I'm on the train, I'm just reading this on the phone. I'm like, okay, sounds good. Because I met Greg, I do believe it was in 2013 when he was actually just started up the Valenfire project. It's just like a super group because they have members of My Dying Bride, Doom, At the Gates, and so forth. Very, very cool band. And basically, I got asked to, he said, could you do that? And I had, what was it? I think it was about 10 days to learn 14 songs.
Oh
And
wow.
when it came into going into the studio, I tracked 14 songs in 2 days.
Wow, dude, that's working, man.
Yeah. Just literally just smashed it out. And I think it was after when speaking to Jamie is okay, knock this off, we've got to be on a record. And the thing is, he's South American and I've worked with many South Americans before. And I'm like, yeah, I've met people like you before. So let's not muck about. Let's have some fun, but let's get the work ethic right. I've just said, look, what do we need doing? And at the time I said, look, just cover me on my expenses, and I listened back to the demos and I was blown away. I was like, wow, where's this coming from? And I mean, the previous album, Abandon All Faith, has got some great tunes in it and so forth. But the vibe on Viscera is really unique. It's really, really unique. And what was nice when I went in there and so forth was there were discussions about, little tiny bits of, maybe articulation of where you play the guitar. Because from doing the Satyricon thing, it was very, very particular of like, okay, if you're going to be playing an E minor here, the
Right.
inversion possibly might be here or it
Yeah.
might be here. And depending on what strings you're using, you get a totally different color. Yeah, there was a lot of kind of experiment of like, okay, well, where could this go? Could this voicing be here? Could it be there? Tried a few different things out. But yeah, it was great. And also, if people were interested on tone capturing for that record, a very interesting ingredient. There was two interesting ingredients. There was a modded it's a JCM 800 that used to belong to E&T, but Chris got it while he left it. I think he picked it up
Well,
to their regret, but he now has that. And also the pedal, it wasn't an HM2, it was actually the Kurt Ballou custom pedal. And I think Kurt actually made that for Greg. Because one of the crazy things that Kurt has, if you ever get his business card is a circuit board for one of his pedals.
oh, cool,
It's
man.
absolutely crazy. Yeah. I met Kurt in Mexico. I think it was after doing the Dominion Festival, getting some taco breakfast or whatever. He had one of his cars. But yeah, the pedal's bizarre because it literally looks like three HM2s, like the Boss style pedals, are all in a row. It's like this block, this crazy,
Yeah.
crazy block. But the big thing I would say for folks when you're trying to get those sounds, it's in the EQs. It's not in how much gain. It's all in the EQs. So if you really want to kind of sculpt any of these sort of sounds, you don't have to change your rig too much. If you just get yourself a decent EQ pedal and just the little nudge on a bit more of the frequencies on the mids, and then that's the unique thing I found with the HM2 pedal. It's all in the EQ. So I tend to roll off all. So I've got one right here. I tend to, a lot of people, when they get these pedals, they do this, right? They
Oh yeah.
literally just put everything up full. No. The thing is, if you've got a great drive sound on your amp already, okay, keep it, right? Keep that sound. I'll just use this as an EQ pedal. So I literally rolled off the distortion all the way off, and then I just tweak these bits accordingly to fish for the sound. And the thing is, it keeps everything really tight. So otherwise, I don't know if you're familiar with albums like Entombed's To Ride, Shoot Straight, Speak the Truth, which is kind of, it's that pedal maxed and it's so noisy and it's great. But within this band, there are elements of noise, but there are elements of super control. So it's important to kind of not get caught up in the cliches with this, you know. And I said, if you use it as an EQ, it's great. And it's just a wonderful way of taking, let's say if you've got like a PV 5150,
Yeah.
you've got an awesome sound, or a 6505, and you've got a great sound out of that, okay? Literally just use this as an EQ.
You don't need the
And
distortion. Now, can you share with us just a typical, and I know you probably shape the EQ differently for different songs here and there maybe, or different albums rather, but can you dial in just a kind of a Ben Ash typical EQ that you would use and share that with us real quick?
interesting. Okay. A big one I do is I push on the mids.
Okay.
It goes completely against the contrary thing. Oh, if you're a metal band, you got
We got to
to
cut the
scoop the
mids.
mids. Do you know what? Okay, let's talk about this very briefly. The
Yes,
album that
please, please.
I blame for this, right? And of a certain age group, okay, people will know about this, okay? The Black Album. The post-production on that is so scoopy. It's so
It
scoopy.
is.
The amount of people that try to copy that tone, which funny enough, actually, how that came, and people know about this anyway, it was actually from Dr. Feelgood. Allegedly, Lars heard that and went, oh, how'd you get that sound? Oh, it's Bob. All right, we'll work with him.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting, man.
look it up. That album,
Well,
Dr. Feelgood, is a main bridge point, and that particular song and that guitar
it's
tone
a scoop, man.
is
Yeah.
why Metallica worked with Bob Rock. Yeah. But yeah, it's so scoopy. But the thing is, here's the thing people miss out is that when they probably recorded that, I've no doubt it probably was very MIDI heavy, right?
Okay.
Because you want that push, right?
Yeah.
But then the post-production comes in, and to make it sound tighter, then there's the scoop, right? The thing is, if you scoop too much on your amplifier, you're taking the body out and you lose volume, you lose presence. Okay, so I would tend to push the mids relatively high, probably not much more than, let's say, 10 o'clock or 12. But I
Gotcha.
would push that. And also, so it's not so flabby, I don't have the bass too high either.
Gotcha.
And another thing to know on the gain settings and so forth, you've got to kind of fish with sound. You'll notice a point where things are biting, okay, but don't just crank. If you just crank everything up into one corner, there's nowhere to go. You've got to give yourself some wiggle room. And also, from a definition that you get on the guitar, it's ridiculous. It's better to kind of be able to move one way or the other than just to shove yourself into a corner. That's just ridiculous, you know. So I always like to cook with sound. So if I need a little bit more, like I say, a bit more seasoning, so a bit of salt and pepper or paprika or whatever, okay, that's when I get the drive pedals out. And a really cool one, I know it's doing the rounds because of a certain Bandcamp, right? I know this pedal because of Obituary. It is the Rat pedal.
The Rat
okay?
pedal.
The Rat one, okay?
Cool.
Such a simple pedal, but I mean, if you want to be playing Slowly We Rot, the End Complete and all that sort of stuff, that's the pedal, all right? And you can get some amazing push and so forth out of that. That's lovely. Another thing to note, which a lot of people don't talk about, is for that Strigoi sound, a big influence for the band is Celtic Frost. Massive influence, right?
You guys have a great sound, by the way, man. I love the latest release you guys did. I listened to the whole thing all the way in the gym several times. So
Thank you.
It's great, man.
I did actually do a TikTok video on this. That took a long time to get that sound because it was Greg and Guido, not Greg and Guido, that's the drummer. Greg and Jamie were tweaking around with the amp setup, and I was literally, I remember, what was it? Let's get an appropriate sound again. Kicking myself out of all this. So, that's got that crunch to it, right? Which is like jack.
Yeah.
So take the tone, roll that off. It's much more blunt. It's heavier.
Yeah.
Because if we're doing faster stuff, right, it's kind of like, when you do this, you roll it off, then you've got... If you really want to get that blunt sound, roll off the pot. Just take the pot
Awesome.
out. It's nothing to do with any distortion pedal on the floor. It's all on the guitar. I'll tell you what it is, Jason. It's from all the time when I was in South America and things were going wrong. It's like I like to kind of work with stuff to a bulletproof point of view. You know, so I'm not relying in plugins. I'm not relying on I just like, look, I've got really basic stuff. How can I cook with sound and make it work? You know, and I still remember being in Russia where people were literally throwing drinks at you and you got smashed glass everywhere.
Oh
And it was all a
man.
bit crazy.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was like a proper, it was bordering on like that Roadhouse kind
The
of gig, you know,
Roadhouse movie, yes.
just short of the chicken one. I watched that the other day. I love that movie.
Oh yeah. I do prefer the old one.
Yeah.
I thought the new one was okay, but of course I prefer, you know, I'm an older guy. I'm 48 now, but almost 49. But yeah, I love the Patrick Swayze version, but the newer one was pretty good as well.
I still need to see it. The Jeff Healey, by the way, Jeff Healey, you know, he's in that movie. I still think it's a bit insensitive where he's like, hey, good to see you. Yeah, it's good to see you too. I'm like, you honestly get that in the script. It's like, wow, okay. But anyway, a big thing just to kind of make it heavier, as I said, it's just rolling off the pot.
Just rolling off the top a little.
Pot. It just goes from that sharp attack, which works great on the fast stuff, but if you really, really want to make it hard, blunt, you blunt the sound by rolling off the pot, and it's nothing to do with any pedals. And the great thing is, if you do want to get into the more thrashy stuff, you can just roll the pack up again, and then you kind of like you're back into. Let's get the sound again. Back into. The really nice thing about working within this band is the mindfulness of, you know, and tone and technique. So I have to change things up an awful lot. And I tell you what, of all the bands I've worked with from a creative point of view, you know, I'm super proud to be, you know, a part of the Strigoi ensemble. Because the thing is, the writing and so forth, you know, the duet is basically Chris and Greg. So my job, I see, is to facilitate, is to serve the song. You know, it's sort of like, well, what is your vision? What is your angle? What do you want? And how can I be as not just sympathetic, but supportive? So because sometimes when you look at a piece of art, you sometimes lose definition of things. So to have a second set of eyes to go, well, hang on, how about you try this or something? They might, hang on, didn't see that. Okay, we'll try that. So it's been really nice to feel like a very organic member. And some people kind of can't, you know, from an ego point of view, they can't handle with, oh, I'm not writing or anything at all. One of the things that's wonderful about TikTok, that particular app, is the music community with the duetting side is amazing, because you can there's a lot of covers, but the original stuff I find super exciting. If someone does like an original jam and you put something on, I find that a great itch to scratch, you know, because the thing is, people got to ask themselves the question, okay, what is your goal as a musician? What do you want out of this? And when people say, I want to make it, so yeah, but how do you define making it? What is the definition? Because the thing is, if you are in a wedding band and you are playing on a regular basis, you are getting a turnover of money on a regular basis, and you can go home, sleep in your own bed, for a lot of other people, that is making it.
That's
and a lot of times,
success, yeah.
A lot of the time that can be more lucrative than a lot of the big tours you see from the big bands peacock strutting. Okay, there's a great adventure in that, but there might be quite a bill at the end, basically, to cover all the costs.
I've heard of that too. I've heard it costs, so much to tour that some bands don't even get paid. And, and going back to like the wedding thing, I mean, that's part of the reason why I play live acoustic solo gigs on the side. I get paid a decent amount of money to go play for 3 or 4 hours somewhere, just do acoustic versions of some 80s covers, and I transpose it and put my own spin on it. and I'll even throw in some acoustic originals that I've written, and it's just it's kind of easy almost, to be honest with you. So yeah, I mean, to me, that's a part of my success. So
Yeah. I'll tell you one of the best wedding stories. This is actually related to a Carcass gig I did in 2014. This was on the Decibel tour with the Black Dahlia Murder, Noisem. Wonderful, wonderful young grime band, by the way. Also, Gorguts, Canadian band Gorguts. And what was hysterical, it was in Texas. It was around the South by Southwest kind of era of town. And this particular venue is like an open air gig, right? So you got the station and you got this auditorium and it's open air, right? Thing is, where this gig was happening, right next door was a green with a marquee. In the marquee, there was a wedding band. So while we're doing this gig, there's a wedding band playing exactly the same time. And there was this great moment during the Gorguts set where suddenly but I was like, this is amazing. And the guy next to me he's just in rolls of laughter. And I'm like,
yeah.
because they're trying to create this ambience, but you've got like, hey, let's have it to the new couple who have married, like this is so funny. Because they're probably getting wound up because there was all that bloody noise happening over there. It was
Right.
amazing. It was incredible. But yeah, I would say regarding all these gigs and so forth, everyone needs to have a real check-in with themselves with what do they want, get a plan of action of how they're going to get there and so forth. And it's really getting an understanding of, what are the things that are just going to be to scratch the ego, or it's just an
Sure.
artistic goal. That's fine. To be honest, at these things, nothing wrong with it, but you do need a reality check with what you want and what is feasible at a time as well. I mean, for example, with Strigoi, Greg's main gig is Paradise Lost. So that's his forefront. So even though there's only like a handful of shows this year,
Very interesting.
um,
Yeah.
they're good shows as well. I mean, we're going to be playing Rockstad in Transylvania. I mean, I think it's hysterical. The band, the name Strigoi, in Transylvania playing in a castle. I was like, that's brilliant.
That
That's
is
so cool.
that's cool, man.
And there's another castle gig we're doing, which is nearly sold out. That is in another castle as well. So, and I've never done that before. The only time I saw a band in a castle, I saw Merciful Fate
Ooh.
playing a castle in Italy, which was amazing.
Oh, I bet that was
Um,
cool, man.
it was amazing. It was so much fun. That was just the ambience was brilliant. But yeah, and also, folks, to know regarding the last Strigoi release, which would have been the EP "Bathed in the Black Song," possibly my favourite song of that particular session, the Viscera sessions. All these records are available on Season of Mist Records, who are an amazing record label. They were, I mean, I remember playing Hellfest, and the show went down really well. They were super, super helpful and supportive. Got loads of great things to say about them. But yeah, the back catalogue's on there. Abandon All Faith is on Nuclear Blast Records, but all the things going forward is going to be Season of Mist.
Awesome.
And if anyone is interested in any of the other material, merch, and so forth, yes, you can go to Season of Mist. But if you go to the Big Cartel page for Strigoi, which you'll find the link on Instagram, there are some different deals and so forth on there as well. So it's definitely well
Awesome.
worth a look. And if anyone else is interested in any of the bits I'm doing, I also have the links in my link tree for any of my socials under the Banish Guitar. You can find it super easy.
Yeah, Ben, and I'll leave all of that in the description of this video. So real quick before we end, man, I mean, you're out there on
Please.
TikTok, you're on Instagram, you put out a lot of content, man, and it's interesting content. I come across your videos and I watch them. Like, a lot of people were just kind of scrolling through and I'm like, okay, you're probably one of the very few I watch on TikTok because I don't use that platform that much. But I'll sit
Sure.
there and I'll watch your entire video. You see the hearts from me and all that, and it's really cool content, man. So,
Oh,
guys,
thank you.
follow Ben on the social media platforms. We'll have all the links in the description of this video. Ben, dude, thank you so much for being on. I mean, dude, you gave a wealth of advice, just wholehearted advice, man, today. So, I appreciate that. I know the viewers appreciate it. So,
Sure, sure.
any last words you want to say to the audience here, man? Anything you want to leave them with?
Absolutely. Well, as you probably know, I do talk a lot. Sometimes I talk too much,
I
so I'll try
welcome
and be
it,
as
dude. I welcome it, man.
I'll try and be as succinct as possible. Um, I mean, a very important thing to note with my mindset, how I think, and trying to be as progressive as I can, is through when I did my MA with WaterBear. I think it's an amazing institute. It's one of the few ones that isn't kind of like stocking filler, how to break the music industry stuff. You know, there's a lot of progressive thinking, and also there's a load of free content on the WaterBear socials, so it's well worth having a look
Awesome.
on there at all. That's WaterBear College of Music. There's some amazing stuff in there, and Bruce, John Dickinson, and you know, he's been a massive inspiration for me, and just an amazing guy. And I wouldn't be doing a lot of the things without him. Um, I think the important thing I would say to everybody who wants to do anything musical, once again, it's really trying to get an understanding of where they're at, where they're going, how they're going to get there, but do understand that, you know, you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. You are going to make mistakes. There are things that are going to go wrong. Okay. But like Satriani said, the lesson is learning the lesson. Years ago, I remember speaking to a student who was doing a tech job, and I said, "How did this gig go?" Yeah, it was great, great. Is that it? Yeah, it was great. But how was the next one? Oh, it was awful. And this diatribe went out, right, of this really bad gig.
Hmm.
They're the ones where you learn the biggest lesson, is where things go wrong. Okay. So rather than thinking, oh, that was terrible, it's like, well, no, you've had an experience. How can you learn from it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's the bounce back. Okay. That's a big one. And one thing I will say to folks, because here's another thing, I know we talked about this before,
Yeah.
is a lot of the gigs that come about, you will see people online who will be shredding, who will be flying up and down the neck. Okay. A lot of the gigs that you will get that are going to keep you in work, it's not going to be that. Okay. Sometimes you might just be, you know, just literally you're doing that for an entire gig, you know, and depending on the gig you've got, you know, it might be like you know, you might just be in a funk band, just like a,
Yeah.
and that'll be it, right? So it's understanding that your skill set needs to be variable. It needs to be flexible and malleable, okay? And if you want that itch to scratch the shred, that's fine. But the core things is to serve the music, okay, and really serve the musician or musicians you are working with, okay. Really get on board. What is the brief? What do the does, you know, if you're joining a band, or if you made, what is it about? What do they want? Okay, and how can you facilitate it? Okay, because the worst thing you can be is if you're in a band should be like that. If you're like that, there's a problem. Okay, so it's making sure you're more like that and as a cluster rather than being the odd one out. Okay, and the only way you're going to make that is if you do make mistakes. Okay, but once again, the lesson is learning the lesson. Try and be malleable, because the personality, you know, it's easier to change your look, get better at your instrument. You can do that, but the person, that's a different question altogether.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the three things, right? It's learning about um, how to, what, you know, be better at your skill craft. Okay, how to actually present yourself in the right way, but also, and this is the big one, a big shout out for me to Nick Barker. Okay, Nick Barker, people might know, who has worked with Cradle of Filth and Dimmy Borger and Borstal and so forth. Good friend of mine. One of the best bits of information that Nick said to me, he said, Ben, it's all about the hang. It's all about the hang. If you can hang, okay, you make the time with the people appropriately,
Yeah.
that's good.
Such golden advice. Ben, thank you so much again. Guys, everybody watching, thank you for watching this show here. Really appreciate you guys. Check out the links. I've got all of Ben's links in the description of this video here, so please do check those out. Also, his band, Strigoi, links for that's going to be in there as well. Ben, thank you once again. To everyone else, guys, keep it metal and keep playing
Indeed.
music.
And always say, keep rocking, stay inspired, be safe, never be afraid. Ben Ash Guitar. Oot use.